Ladies and gentlemen, if someone walked away from you and your first instinct was to chase, to explain, to prove your worth, stop right there, because that's the exact move that pushes them further away. What if I told you the reason they haven't come back yet isn't because you're not enough, but because you've been giving too much? There is one shift, one powerful change in how you show up that instantly flips the dynamic and makes them feel your absence in a way they can't ignore. This isn't about begging, texting, or playing games. It's about doing the one thing that makes someone realize what they lost. And once you understand it, you'll never chase again. Let's start with a truth that might sting a little, but it's the kind of sting that wakes you up rather than knocks you down. The moment someone walks away, the instinct is to chase, to explain, to prove, to convince. You replay every conversation, every message, every smile, and you think if you could just say the right thing, do the right thing, show up one more time, everything would change. But attraction doesn't work that way, and love certainly doesn't respond to pressure. What brings someone back isn't desperation, it's contrast. It's the feeling that something valuable has shifted, and that shift always begins with you. Right now, your power is not in reaching out. Your power is in stepping back, not to punish, not to play games, but to recalibrate the dynamic that existed before they left. Because if what you were doing before truly worked, they wouldn't have gone anywhere. This is not about blame, it's about awareness. When someone leaves, it's usually because the emotional balance tipped. Too much effort from one side, too much availability, too much explaining, too much trying to hold something together that was already slipping. Pulling back isn't losing them. It's removing the pressure that pushed them away in the first place. Here's the part most people get wrong. They think pulling back means becoming cold, distant, or pretending not to care. That's not it. Real pullback is internal. It's deciding that your worth is not on trial. It's choosing to stop auditioning for someone who already knows who you are. When you stop chasing clarity, reassurance, and validation, something fascinating happens. The emotional noise disappears. And in that silence, space is created. Space is where curiosity lives. Space is where longing grows. Space is where someone starts to wonder why you're no longer bending yourself into shapes for them. This is where self-respect becomes magnetic. Not the loud kind that announces itself, but the quiet kind that changes your posture, your tone, your energy. You respond when you want to, not because you're afraid of losing them. You live your life fully, instead of pausing it, waiting for a text that may or may not come. And that shift is felt, even from a distance. People are drawn back to what feels grounded, secure, and self-contained. They are rarely drawn back to what feels frantic or fragile. Now let's talk about the fear underneath all of this. The fear that if you don't act, they'll forget you. The fear that someone else will come along. The fear that silence means it's over forever. But here's the paradox. The more you try to secure someone, the less secure they feel with you. Attraction thrives on choice, not obligation. When you stop trying to control the outcome, you actually increase the chance of the outcome you want. Because you're no longer forcing a decision, you're allowing them to feel their own. What makes someone come back is not a perfect message or a dramatic declaration. It's the realization that life without you feels different in a way they didn't anticipate. That realization can't happen if you're always there cushioning the impact of your absence. They need to feel the gap you used to fill. They need to notice that the emotional availability they took for granted is no longer on tap. And that doesn't require you to say a word. It requires consistency in your self-focus. Use this time not to wait, but to build. Build a life that feels rich again. Reconnect with friends, routines, passions that may have been sidelined. Not as a performance, not to post online hoping they'll see, but because you deserve a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's uncertainty. When you genuinely start enjoying your own momentum again, your energy changes. You become less reactive, less anxious, more centered. And that energy is incredibly attractive because it signals emotional strength. If and when they reach out, and often they do, the way you respond matters more than the words themselves. Calm, warm, unrushed. You don't jump into explanations or reopen old wounds. You don't demand answers or apologies in the first exchange. You meet them where they are, not where you wish they'd be. That emotional steadiness tells them something powerful. You are no longer stuck in the moment they left. You've moved forward, and you're choosing how close you allow them to be. This doesn't mean you erase boundaries. In fact, boundaries are what make reconnection meaningful. You don't slide back into old patterns just because they showed up. You let consistency speak louder than promises. You observe actions instead of clinging to words. And if they sense that access to you is no longer automatic, that your time and emotional investment are now intentional, respect grows. Respect is often the missing ingredient when someone walks away. The real reason this works is because it restores polarity. Desire needs space to breathe. When everything is explained, available, and predictable, desire fades. When there's mystery, autonomy, and self-trust, desire reignites. Why? Or not trying to get them back by doing more. You're allowing them to come back by doing less, but being more of yourself. And here's the most important shift of all. At some point, your focus subtly changes. You're no longer asking, how do I get them back? You start asking, do I even want them back if nothing changes? That question alone changes the dynamic, because now reconciliation is a choice, not a need. And when someone senses that you're choosing rather than clinging, the dynamic flips. Suddenly, they're the one leaning in, trying to understand where they stand with you. This is not about manipulation, it's about alignment. Aligning your actions with your worth, aligning your energy with self-respect, aligning your life with a sense of fullness that doesn't depend on someone else's decision. When those things align, the outcome often surprises you, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped working against yourself and allowed attraction to do what it naturally does. When pressure is removed, confidence is restored, and space is honored. And as that space is honored, something deeper begins to happen inside you. You start to reconnect with the version of yourself that existed before the anxiety, before the overthinking, before the constant monitoring of someone else's moods and messages. You remember what it feels like to wake up without immediately checking your phone, to make plans without wondering how they'll react, to feel present in your own body again. This isn't just attractive to someone else, it's healing for you. And healing energy has a way of drawing people back because it feels safe, steady, and grounded. At this stage, it's important to resist the temptation to narrate your growth to them. You don't need to announce that you've changed, that you're stronger now, that you've learned your lesson. Real change doesn't need a press release. It shows up in how you move through conversations, in how you don't rush to fill silence, in how you're comfortable letting things unfold without grabbing the steering wheel. When someone senses that you're no longer trying to convince them of your value, they start to feel it instead. There's also a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can survive disappointment. When you stop fearing loss, you stop acting in ways that create it. You don't overextend. You don't overgive. You don't twist yourself into knots to keep someone interested. Instead, you show up as someone who enjoys connection but doesn't depend on it to feel whole. That balance is rare, and when someone experiences it with you, it leaves a mark. Even if they walk away, they carry that feeling with them, and it often pulls them back. You might notice moments where doubt creeps in, moments where you wonder if you're doing the right thing, if staying silent means missing your chance, if letting go means losing forever. In those moments, remind yourself that forcing connection has never created lasting desire. The relationships that thrive are the ones where both people feel free to choose each other. Freedom is the foundation of genuine attraction. Without it, any return would be temporary, fragile, and rooted in fear rather than love. As time passes, you begin to see the situation more clearly. You recognize patterns why all may have ignored before. You see where you compromised too much, where you abandoned your own needs to keep the peace, where you mistook intensity for intimacy. This clarity isn't meant to harden you, it's meant to refine you. It allows you to approach future interactions with discernment instead of urgency. And that discernment is powerful because it changes the questions you ask, the standards you hold, and the energy you bring. If they come back during this phase, the dynamic will feel different. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, not charged with the old emotional volatility. It will feel calmer, slower, more intentional. And that's a good thing, because real connection isn't built in emotional chaos. It's built in mutual curiosity, respect, and the willingness to meet each other where you actually are, not where you hope the other person will be. You no longer rush to define the relationship or secure guarantees. You allow things to develop organically. You listen more than you explain. You observe how they show up over time instead of being swayed by one emotional moment. This patience sends a subtle but unmistakable message. You trust yourself to handle whatever unfolds. That trust is incredibly attractive because it removes pressure from the connection and replaces it with ease. What often surprises people is that even if the person does come back, you may find yourself less attached to the outcome than you expected. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned how to care without losing yourself. You've experienced the strength that comes from standing on your own emotional feet. And once you have that, you're no longer willing to accept half-effort, mixed signals, or uncertainty disguised as romance. This shift also changes how you communicate. Your words become simpler, clearer, more grounded. You don't overanalyze every message or read between every line. You say what you mean without over-explaining. You express interest without chasing. You set boundaries without guilt. And the more you do this, the more you reinforce a new dynamic, one where connection is a choice, not a struggle. It's worth remembering that sometimes the person who comes back isn't the same version that left. Time and distance have a way of reshaping perspective. They may return with more appreciation, more humility, more clarity about what you bring into their life. And if they do, it's because your absence taught them something your presence couldn't. It showed them what life feels like without your energy, your warmth, your steadiness. That lesson can't be taught through words or arguments. It can only be felt through space. At the same time, you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're choosing yourself every day through your actions, your routines, your mindset. You invest in your growth, your joy, your future. You build a life that feels expansive rather than constricted by someone else's indecision. And from that place, any relationship you enter becomes an addition, not a rescue. This is where true power lies. Not in getting someone back at any cost, but in becoming someone who no longer needs to chase what isn't aligned. Ironically, that's often the moment when alignment returns. When you stop trying to prove your worth, people feel it. When you stop clinging, people lean in. When you stop waiting, life moves forward in ways that surprise you. And as you continue to live from this place, you realize that the outcome, whether they return or not, no longer defines you. Your sense of self is anchored in something deeper than someone else's decision. That stability radiates outward. It affects how you walk into rooms, how you handle conflict, how you show up in relationships. It makes you resilient without being guarded, open without being naive. The irony is that the very thing you thought you needed them for, reassurance, validation, a sense of being chosen, you've learned to give yourself. And once you have that, any connection that returns to you does so on healthier ground, not out of fear of loss, but out of genuine desire to be part of each other's lives.